Okay, I'm going to go ahead and start. I've enabled, there's not too many people in this session, so I have enabled your mics and your cameras. If you want to turn your camera on um, and be seen, um, then please feel free to do so. Uh, Tonight's training is going to be on STARS Level 3, and we'll talk about what the standards are for STARS Level 3 and also how to incorporate STARS Level 3 into your CQI plan. For STARS, this meeting is being recorded and it will be posted on the STARS website. Eventually. Maggie was going to work on that today, and so I don't know what is there yet, but there's likely to be some things pretty soon. We have, as always, at the end of this training, I'll be sending you a copy of the DPD form and sending the attendance sheet to Northern Lights at CCV so that you can get credit for it. And if you have questions or things that you'd like us to make a note of on the STARS website, there is a frequently asked questions section, and you can type questions or comments there, and we'll be able to see what your questions are and craft answers for them and be responsive to the programmatic needs. And I am going to go ahead and start the presentation. If I haven't, does anyone have any questions actually before I start? Okay, I guess no. Okay, so this, as I said, is presentation is about STARS Level 3, which is the early implementation stage of the STARS system. So STARS Level 3, builds on the foundation of STARS Level 2. At STARS Level 2, programs evaluate the professional knowledge of their staff and plan to fill the knowledge gaps. They assess their capacity to engage families and youth through use of Strengthening Families and Youth Thrive program self-assessment tools, and have either determined there are no gaps and already have begun implementing activities to engage families and youth, or have created a CQI plan. Programs that have already met STARS Level 2 standards may apply for higher STARS levels without a CQI plan for each level, but must submit evidence of the standards being met at each level below the level being applied for. I'm starting out by talking a little bit about the CQI plan, which stands for Continuous Quality Improvement. And I think most folks I'm seeing have attended some of these trainings before. So I hopefully when I say CQI plan, you know what I'm talking about. But if you don't, you can raise your hand or put a comment in the chat or something along those lines, and I can use the full name. So when you're creating a continuous quality improvement plan for STARS Level 3, the program can use the CQI plan created for STARS Level 2 as a starting point. You can describe the successes that have been made toward achieving goals set in STARS Level 2 and set goals and objectives for each of the STARS elements of quality that you plan to achieve as part of your STARS Level 3 application. So the CQI plan for STARS Level 3, or the early implementation stage of the STARS system, is going to be similar to the STARS Level 2 continuous quality improvement plan, in that the plan goals and objectives will address each of the 3 elements of quality in STARS: adult-child interactions, family and youth engagement, and responsive practice. And as you may have learned in other STARS presentations, adult-child interactions are reciprocal action that is characterized by communication as adults and children work or spend time together. Nurturing, supportive, and reciprocal adult-child interactions are foundational to the learning process. And in the STARS system, adult-child interactions are measured by the use of program assessment tools such as the CLASS, the TPOT, and the program quality assessment, which we'll talk about more in a little bit. Family and youth engagement is family and youth engagement are similar, but two slightly different things. Family engagement is a shared responsibility in which early childhood and after-school programs are committed to reaching out to engage families in meaningful ways, and in which families are committed to actively supporting their children's learning and development. Youth engagement is reaching out to youth to ensure youth voice and participation in program planning and reflection on all programmatic aspects. Responsive practice is teaching and caregiving strategies that are specific to individual children and youth's interests, needs, and developmental level, family culture, language, racial and ethnic diversity, and gender identity. Responsive practice requires awareness of one's own views about difference and the ability to understand the varying cultural and community norms of children and their families. Responsive teaching and caregiving bridges gaps in communication and understanding so that supportive interactions between children, youth, program staff, and families can occur. At STARS Level 3, programs will have already begun implementation of processes to improve family and youth engagement of the program, and will have begun use of child observation records as input for program planning. And will have a program assessment using the assessment tool designated for their program. This type of program assessment is done by a Sparks assessor in support of the adult-child interactions element of quality. It is a different process from the program self-assessment for the family and youth engagement element of quality. Are there any questions about that before I continue?
So would the family and youth, would part of that be the strengthening families
Yes.
assessment? And what would if we didn't work with after school, would we have to do the youth engagement piece, or is
No.
still...
Oh, no. You would do it's an either or depending on who the ages of the children you're serving in your program. If you don't have after school children, then you would only use the Strengthening Families program self-assessment. Okay.
And if you had, what if you were a home program and you had both, like the birth to and including after school.
Mm-hmm. So really, for youth, that's children from fourth grade to age 13. So, I would say which program assessment you would use would be up to you, up to the family child care provider. Um, whether they just did the Strengthening Families program self-assessment or they also did the Youth Thrive survey.
And where can we find the Youth Thrive survey?
I will put it in the chat. It is the Center for the Study of Social Policy. Sorry, my typing has really been terrible, worse than usual today. And if you type that into your search, it will come up. Their website will come up. The Center for the Study of Social Policy website will come up, and then you can, and then they have a search on their website. And if you type in Strengthening Families or Youth Thrive, all the information will come up, including the self-assessments.
Okay. So if it's an after school program and they have kindergarten through up to 13, would they choose also based on their numbers, or would they need
If
to
it
do
was an
both?
if it was an after school program serving children from kindergarten up to age 13, then I would say that program should do both. Because the, kindergartners are going to have a whole different set of needs and influences on their development than the children who are, 11, 12, and 13. Any other questions about this slide?
Sure, Hannah. I just
Yeah.
want you to be aware that I can't seem to turn on my camera. I don't know if it's.
So let me check. I thought I enabled it for everyone, but let me see. People.
Could be operator trouble on my end.
Hold on. Just a second. My thing is showing me that I have the cameras enabled. So I'm not sure how you would, let's see. There's a toolbar at the top.
Yep.
And there's a camera icon.
It won't let me turn it on. I don't know if it's
It won't let you turn it on. Oh, maybe I don't have control over that after all. I thought I did. Let's see.
And I'm even, it says, I don't know. Unless I go out and try to come back in.
Okay. It should let you turn it on. So I don't know why. I don't know why it won't.
I'm okay if you're okay. I just know that I mentioned that the last time, and now to have it not work on my end, I'm like, oh well, that's not good.
Yeah. Well, I think I let everybody's camera. I mean, I'll have to check and see if I did it right, but at least from my controls that I can see, it looks like cameras are enabled, so you should be able to click on it and turn it on. And if it's not, then I'll have to go see how we can fix that for further
Okay.
further meetings. Let's see. And there is another question in the chat about, would this count for a school age summer camp? So we haven't made a distinction for school age summer camp programs. If this summer camp is like if it's a summer camp, but it's an sort of like an extension of a regular school year, school age program, then probably you could get away with using the same Strengthening Families or Youth Thrive survey that was done in the school year, because the nature of summer camp is even more, because kids are only going to be there for a really short period of time, but it's still, and you know, and it takes time to it takes time to do the survey and collect the information and make changes to the program. But one thing you could do is, one summer take the survey and the next summer put the plan in place based on the information that you got the summer before. If the timeline of the summer camp is too short to be able to do it, while the camp's open, if it's only open for 6 weeks or something like that, or if kids are only coming for 2 week at a time sessions, or, that type of thing. Okay. So if there are no more questions about the CQI plan early implementation, I will move along to the next slide. This will go into a little bit more detail about the adult-child interactions element and program assessment. So program assessments at STARS Level 3 are going to be the class for early childhood programs, home programs, center-based programs, and public preschool programs, unless the program is an early MTSS implementation site. In that case, the program will be receiving a teapot or tippy toes, program assessment, and in that case, the program assessment would be sorry, I'm reading the chat and losing my thoughts. So if the program's an early implementation site, they'll be receiving a program assessment as part of the early MTSS process. And so that will be able to count for STARS. If the program is not, then a Sparks assessor will come and do a program assessment using the class. At STARS Level 3, the program will not receive a score for the class assessment, but they will receive written feedback from which they can formulate their goals and objectives in the adult-child interactions element of program quality. For school age programs, as I mentioned before, programs will use the school age program quality assessment. There are several different types of program quality assessment. There's the school age program quality assessment for school age children, which is kindergarten through 4th grade. The youth program quality assessment, which is 4th grade through age 13. And there's this SEL program quality assessment, which is social emotional learning program quality assessment. And I think there's some other ones, but for now, these are the ones we'll be using for STARS. And these assessments will also be provided by Vermont After School, but will be accessed through the Sparks program. Ah, okay. Are there any questions about that before we move along? On the next slide, I'm going to talk about program assessment information and how ways that you can or incorporate the assessment feedback into your program improvement plan. So first you determine the type of program assessment from the array of assessments available for your program. Then you can request a program assessment from Sparks, or unless it's an early MTSS implementation site, or um, or if the program is a Head Start partner program. If your program partners with Head Start, you'll be receiving program assessments for your Head Start classrooms as part of that process, and those can be used for stars. If you don't have a Head Start partnership in all your classrooms, then you'll have some stars. Then a Sparks assessor would need to come and do the classrooms that aren't Head Start classrooms. You can use feedback from the assessments to develop goals, objectives, and PDSA cycles for your CQI plan. And the evidence is the evidence that you're going to submit with your application is the evidence that you generated during your PDSA cycle implementation. And PDSA stands for Plan, Do, Study, Act, and I will be talking more about that in a couple minutes on the next slide. Goals for the CQI plan are broad and intended to be met over the 3-year period of the STARS application and CQI plan. To create objectives, break the goals into smaller, more specific items that are achieved over a shorter period of time, and cumulatively bring the program goals to completion. Determining objectives is the starting place for the plan, do, study, act cycles that are the building blocks of the CQI plan. So we've been talking about adult-child interactions and program assessment, and how those program assessments are going to support your CQI plan that is being developed for the adult-child interactions element of quality. For the family and youth engagement element of quality, you'll be using the Strengthening Families Program Self-Assessment or Youth Thrive Survey, as I mentioned, and those are different. Holly, did you have a question?
Oh, no.
Yep. Okay. Okay. So at the 2-star level, the Strengthening Families Program Self-Assessment or Youth Thrive was used, and goals were created and to begin the CQI plan for family and youth engagement in the program. If the program already did a STARS level 2 CQI plan, they can use those goals from that plan and expand them for their level 3 plan. Once you've created goals using the Strengthening Families or Youth Thrive program self-assessment and the STARS standards for STARS level 3, you begin the plan, do, study, act cycles and show the process of early implementation of family and youth engagement goals as part of that process. And for the responsive practice, next I'll talk a little bit about the responsive practice element of quality. And I'm going to, again, define that for you because it's a little bit confusing for people. Because we've not used this language a lot previously in STARS. So once again, responsive practice is teaching and caregiving strategies that are specific to individual children and or youth's interests, needs, developmental level, family culture, language, racial and ethnic diversity, and gender identity. Responsive practice requires awareness of one's own views about difference and the ability to understand the varying cultural and community norms of children and their families. Responsive teaching and caregiving bridges gaps in communication and understanding so that supportive interactions between children, youth, program staff, and families can occur. So the way that you're going to know how you're doing with your responsive practice is to begin child observations or for children in after school programs who are older, and you can the you don't necessarily need to do observations, but you collect input from children in your program, and we call that using child voice on a regular basis. You record the observations or child or youth voice and use them for learning activity planning purposes. In groups with more than one staff person, observation and planning will involve team members. I see that your hand is up, Holly.
Is the definition of that responsive practice of what you were just saying, is that in the manual thing?
Yes, it's in the definition section of the manual. Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, you are welcome. Okay. Okay, so you use information collecting from observations to determine how to improve planned activities that consider the needs and interests in each and every child. And you evaluate how the program currently meets those needs. You consider if the program activities are developmentally appropriate, because if you remember in STARS Level 2, staff are trained on developmentally appropriate practice. And then you consider if the program activities align with the VELS and Vermont After School Program standards, VELS or Vermont After School Program standards, and build on goals and information collected from the Level 2 CQI plan. Which you don't have to do if you don't have to build on your Level 2 CQI plan if you did not generate one because you already met the Level 2 standards when you're getting ready to go to STARS Level 3. Yes, I will send you this PowerPoint as well after the presentation. Holly?
Where do we find the after school program standards?
They should be available on the Vermont After School website.
Okay.
I know they've been they are very newly created, but they have been approved, and so I'm assuming they're going to be posted soon, and I can find that out. I actually have to find that out. Because you can't really do it if you don't. I mean, you need to have access to them in order to know what your plan is going to have related to them. Any other questions about how you'll be creating your CQI plan about responsive practice for STARS level 3? So I don't know. So if you notice, a lot of the things that I mentioned in the definition of responsive practice, are not included in STARS level 3. That's because at STARS level 3, each STARS level builds upon the accomplishments of the level below it. So as you move up in STARS level, you're adding more elements of responsive practice to your program, to your CQI plan, and to your evidence that you're meeting the standards. And so at level 3, we're working on how to use child observation for program planning purposes, and then developmentally appropriate practice and learning standards for the type of program that you work in first, before we start adding other elements to that responsive practice. Okay. So the CQI plan for level 3, the plan will include goals and objectives for each of the elements of quality. Goals and objectives will have been identified through a program assessment for the goals and objectives for adult-child interactions, by a strengthening families and/or youth thrive survey, the PDSA cycles from level 2 for family and youth engagement, and child observations for the responsive practice element of quality. Okay. So the plan, do, study, act cycles, I'm going to show you a picture of what this looks like next, but to do the plan, do, study, act cycles, you use objectives, first of all, that you've created based on your broader goals for your CQI plan. You identify the needed changes and specific objectives to meet in order for those changes to happen. That's the plan phase. Also, as part of the plan phase of the plan, do, study, act cycle, you will predict how the change activities will be successful and identify what tests you'll put in place to provide information about how the objectives will be met. You do the test activity and you collect data or information about the results. You reflect. So that's the do phase of the plan, do, study, act cycle. The study phase of the cycle is reflecting on the results of the test information, also called data, and determine what next steps will be taken. And the determination of the next steps is the act cycle of the plan, do, study, act. And once you've determined next steps, you're back at the beginning again, and you start with another plan. And here's a little picture of what it looks like. And I have used identify what needs to change in the program as the first step of the plan. And that's where you have, that's where you've identified objectives. The second step, plan. You plan you take your objectives and your predictions, and you plan to carry out the test, and you plan for how you'll collect information about information from the test about the activity's success or not success. You carry out the test for the do cycle. You document problems and unexpected observations, and you collect data. Oopsie. And data is just another word for information, usually in the form of facts or numbers. I see somebody has a hand up.
It's me, Heather.
Hi, Heather. Go ahead and ask your question.
So on these CQI plans,
Mhm.
how many, like, is there like a certain amount of things that we need to have on it, like a certain amount of objectives we're working on to meet the criteria for a certain star? Like, do I need to have like 10 different things I'm working on, or could it be 5, or should it be like, I'm just curious how much we're looking at.
Right. So we haven't identified a specific number. You need to have, I would say, because it's going to be a 3-year plan, so at least 2 broad goals, broad and general goals for each one of the elements of quality. And then the objectives are how you break down those broader goals into like doable pieces. And then it's however many of those plan, do, study, act cycles you need to achieve the goal. And it's really up to the individual program
Thank you.
how many they wind up doing. I mean, I would say you would probably do at least a couple of implementation cycles, plan, do, study, act cycles, maybe a couple each year of the stars, of your stars plan, CQI plan, to move forward. That's definitely one of the things that during this first year, that's going to be the pilot, we'll really learn a lot more about how those plan, do, study, act cycles are going to work for folks and how long it takes to really get through the process of one, and be able to, so we'll know a lot better after that. But I still don't think there's going to be a specific number even then that'll be required. Okay. So let's go back to this slide. We were talking about the carrying out the test. So another way to think about that, carrying out the test, when you choose an objective, let's say it's an objective in the responsive practice element of quality, and you've decided that you want to work on developmentally appropriate practice for the preschoolers in your class, and you want to focus on having a developmentally appropriate circle time, for example. And so the test is going to be what you decide to change about how you're doing your circle time based on what you've observed from children participating in the circle time. And then so you might decide, well, like, I'm having trouble, kids aren't sitting in circle for very long, and I've been doing the weather and the calendar and singing a song, like a welcome song or something like that. So you might decide to change something up in the circle and have something, and do something, do some other type of activity in the circle, with the children, to see if their interest remains, and if you're having less trouble keeping them engaged in the circle time activity, for example. And then you would know if it worked or not based on, again, observing and seeing what the results were. That would be your test, and your data would be whether children were engaged in circle time more. And then your study would be to compare that information, look at that information and reflect upon it and decide whether that worked or didn't work to change up your circle time, and then what you might want to do next if it got better but not as good as you wanted it to be. What else could you do that would be developmentally appropriate, engage children more and be more responsive to children's interests in your circle, for example. And that would be one little cycle that you could just carry it over and over and over again until you got the result you were looking for. So for programs that have met the standards for stars, let me see if I skipped anything. I'm going to go back to this one for a second. Okay. So programs that have met those standards for stars level 2 and 3 can apply for stars level 4. If you the evidence that you've used to show that you meet levels, evidence that levels 2 and 3 standards have been met must also be submitted if you apply for stars level 4, but you don't have to do a CQI, a separate CQI plan for each one of those levels. The CQI plan will just be for the stars level that you're currently applying for. And if folks would like, I can share with you what the CQI plan forms look like. It's the same form for each one of the levels, if that's helpful. I think most of you have seen the form and I've sent it to most of you, because these names are all looking pretty familiar when I look at the guest list. So you can just type it in the chat if you want to see the forms and I will pull them up. For more information, for answers to your questions, as well as other information about stars, you can visit the stars website. There is also a link there where you can find answers to frequently asked questions. You can type questions or comments in there, and that way we can track and make our frequently asked question answers better. You can also call this number for more information about stars, and that you will, if I don't answer, because that's my number, if you leave a message, I will call you back and we can provide information that way. And you can also email me at stars@vermont.gov. Okay. Okay. So I will pull up those CQI plan forms again and show you those, and then you can continue. I mean, if folks have more questions, I can also see what else I have I can show you to answer those. Okay. Heather, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, just one quick question.
Sure.
So obviously my stars aren't due till 2025.
Mhm.
I'm assuming I'm going to have to do it before that because this is a whole new system. So when would I start working on it to be prepared for whenever it will be due? I'm assuming not 2025.
So for the first year, from now until July 2024, we're not going to ask programs to do a annual report. So you wouldn't have to do one until then. But if depending on what time in depending on what time in 2025 you would need to submit your application, and the annual report is just going to be an update of your CQI plan. So you wouldn't have to have a completed CQI plan to submit an annual report, but you could send like just information about how you were setting it up and getting to work on the process. So I would say you would want to give yourself, I don't know, 6 to 8 months to work on your CQI plan before you send it in, because you'll be scheduling and having a program assessment, and then making plans based on that feedback, and you'll be doing your child observations and your program planning, activities planning to demonstrate um, responsive practice, and also that strengthening families or youth thrive family engagement process. And so they're all things that you probably do in a way now for the STARS systems, but some of the things you now do for STARS you won't be doing for the new system, and you'll be focusing a lot more intensely on these 3 things that are the elements of quality for STARS. And I would say that all those processes would take time to document and collect the evidence and create the plan for your application. So I'd say 6 to 8 months at least that you would want to start in advance to do all that stuff.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So I'll just scroll slowly down the STARS plan. So you always want to make sure that we know who you are, that we know what STARS level you have, and what your CQI plan is for, when the plan is going to start, and who of your staff are working on the plan and responsible for the progress of the plan. And that's really not for us. That's really for the program, so that you have a record of who's working on it. And the way that the application is going to work is that it's going to be a portfolio style application, and each program will have its own portfolio that they're the owners of and that they manage. And when it's time to submit, you won't actually submit your portfolio to us. You'll actually allow us access to your portfolio so that we can see what's in it. And that's how we'll determine, that's how we'll be able to determine your STARS level. And the portfolio will have a function where we can type messages back and forth to you and ask for more information if we need it. And then you'll just add it to your portfolio. So that's how that will work. And that's why it's important for you to keep track of who's responsible for it in your program. I see there's a question. It's a Misty. No,
What
Heather.
is going to
Go ahead.
say, I'm going to use this as an example because she's a good friend of mine and a colleague, and she's 60 plus years old and is not very good on the computer. Is there a paper application if she chooses to do everything that way instead of the new computer system that's going to be created?
We don't have a paper application as it stands right now. What I would say is for somebody in that situation, her best choice would be to get a Sparks coach to work with her on it, and help her through the process. And if I don't want to overpromise, but I know with the current application, if there are people that can't access, you know, that don't have access to computer or don't have the skills to do it on the computer, that we still allow them to send a paper application. So we probably would, in all fairness and equity, practicing what we preach, but we don't have one. We don't have one created at this point.
Thank you.
So here, these are just sample goals. As you can see, they're kind of broad. They're specific enough so that you can tell if you've met them or not, but they're broad and overarching and meant to be accomplished over a period of time. So they're general. The goals are general intentions. And then, as I mentioned, objectives are clear, measurable targets set to meet the goal. And I like to say, breaking the goal down into manageable chunks, doing a little bit at a time toward the goal. So once you've set your goals, you've used information from your class observation feedback or your family and youth engagement program self-assessment, from PDSA cycles, from STARS Level 2, and from doing child observations and getting other information about your program, and planning curriculum based on the observation data. So this data and sources and evidence list is also, this helps you organize what you're going to send in with your application to show that you've met the standards. And then here's a little example of what the plan, do, study, act cycles as described in your plan form are going to look like. And to the question that was asked before, sorry about that. These plan, do, study, act cycles are the clear and measurable objectives that you set to meet your program goals. And you can have as many of these as you want to show how you met your goals. If you're doing a lot of rapid cycles, you don't have to describe each one. You can select the ones that show the most progress and add those to your plan. So here's what some goals for family, objectives for family and youth engagement might look like, and how you would fill out the form. And here's some examples of objectives you might set for, and this sample CQI plan is for STARS Level 3, so it fits exactly with what we're talking about for STARS Level 3. Some sample the types of objectives you might find for responsive practice.
Joanna, can I ask my question?
Yes.
So I'm just trying to understand. So the portfolio, I understand it's online. Is this
Mhm.
something that we can keep online and like we work on as we go? Because I'm just thinking like
Yes.
if I do like videos of like observations of myself with the children, is that something I can upload so it's not taking up storage on my phone?
Yes.
Okay.
You will be able to do
Perfect.
that. So, and there's a little bit of good news, bad news here because the internal process that we have to go through for the state to be able to use this online platform is we haven't been able to complete it yet, and it's going to take, I don't know, a few more weeks. So in the meantime, we've had to create us in a different application that it doesn't work very as well. But it's the workaround we can do till we get something that is going to work better for folks. Holly, you have a question?
Yes. Is the portfolio something that we set up or something that STAR sets up for the initial?
So the way that I think it's going to work, and I'm not 100% sure, but I think what happens is we give you permission to use the platform, and then there's a it's called Mahara, and some people may have used it as part of their director credential portfolio. If you've ever submitted one of those, it's the same one. So then it's basically it's set up for you, and then you just I don't know how to describe it. It's set up for you as like sort of a general framework, and then you create the CQI plan and add the evidence in the order and organizational way that you want to do it, but it's set up so that you can do that. And you get a username and a password. So you own the portfolio, it's yours. And then when it's time to submit, you give permission for us to view it, basically.
And then the second question that I had was, so we had to do goals for each of the 3 areas. So we would have at least 3 goals.
You'd have at least 3. Yep.
But or maybe it's 6 goals because you said 2 for each area.
Well, in this plan, I had 2 for each area. You could have fewer, but you'd have to have a lot of objectives. Again, it'd have to be a really big goal with a lot of objectives and PDSA cycles if you only had one for each one.